Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at an incredibly powerful team in the Open Master League. Dialga, Therian Landorus, and Ho-Oh. This was my legend team 4 seasons ago, and it's gotten way better now that Landorus has access to Sandsear Storm. One of my factions teammates was playing the team today and went on a 17-game win streak with it. I tried it myself, first set immediately went 5-0. It's safe to say the team is absolutely absurdly strong in the current meta, and the battles that we're showing today will show why. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and check out the team in action. Hopping into the first match, picking up a terrible lead, Dialga into Ho-Oh. I'm going to immediately save switch into Therian Landorus. My opponent staying in this matchup and going for the Brave Bird, so they clearly do not have a great response to the Landorus save switch. They fire off the Brave Bird. My opponent is now going to send in a Zacian. I have a massive energy head start, so I can get to work with the Landorus, debuffing their attack again and again and again. Sandsear Storm is just an amazing move to have on the save switch. Even if the opponent sends in a Pokemon that does do very well into Landorus like Kyogre, you can debuff it to the point where it just can't really do any damage as it exits the matchup. I'm able to tank the -2 play rough, overfarm quite a bit, fire off the Sandsear Storm, and win switch advantage. I'm expecting they're going to have Dialga in the back. Judging by their hesitance to switch in right away, that's what I'm reading, so I decided to save a Sandsear Storm for later and actually pivot into the Ho-Oh. Now this is a bit of a risk. I'm giving up switch advantage, but I'm making a hard team read that it's going to be Dialga in the back. They go for the Sacred Fire, they get the debuff. I go for the Sacred Fire, I get the debuff. From here, they're probably just going to knock me out with the Brave Bird. I'm going to send in Dialga, and I'm expecting this endgame will be dueling Dialgas. I send in my Dialga, but disaster strikes. I read the team wrong. It's not a Dialga in the back, it's a Xerneas, and I'm in trouble now. They fire off the Moonblast. It makes sense to not go for the close combat because they do need 2 charge attacks to KO. I'm farming up, firing off the Iron Head. Iron Head is going to be shielded by my opponent. They're farming up, they're firing off energy, and I do need to shield. They are 1 off the next close combat here, so I'm going to throw 2 Dragon Breaths, switch, go for the Sandsear Storm. Is this the CMP sack swap? I needed to have a chance. And it is. We not only catch the close combat onto the Landorus, but I'm able to force the shield onto the debuff Xerneas with my Sandsear Storm. They switch out into the Ho-Oh. I overfarm as much as I can. The Dragon Breath's putting it into Iron Head range. Back in comes the Xerneas, but there's no shields remaining for the Xerneas. This Iron Head plus a couple Dragon Breaths will be enough to knock out, and we win what looked like a completely unwinnable game. Picking up a terrific lead in the next match, Dialga into Giratina Origin. The opponent not switching out clues me into the fact that they are weak to Dialga somewhere in the back. And in that case, it could be something like a Kyogre, which would be very problematic for my team. I'm staying in with the Dialga, I'm farming up, and I'm firing off the Iron Head. The Iron Head is going to be shielded, so the opponent really does not want to see my healthy Dialga. If it is Kyogre, Energy Lead Landorus is probably the best bet to bait it out, so I save switch into the Landorus. Opponent is going to send in Kyogre, and now Landorus can get to work doing what it does best, debuffing and debuffing and debuffing. My opponent not throwing their charge attack. It looks like they might try and farm down, but watch this. They're going to try for the farm down, but due to the debuffs, the Landorus is going to be able to either force switch advantage or just pick up the knockout. They let it go. Down goes Kyogre. In the back is Dialga. I have Ho-Oh, and I'm completely in the driver's seat of this match. Sandsear Storm is such a tremendous upgrade on Landorus. This could be a Thunder, so I will respect it. It wasn't enough for the Draco, and it is the Thunder. They'll switch when I get to 100 energy, because that's the most logical time for me to try and throw my charge attack. But instead of throwing it, I just switch into my Dialga. I farm down their catch attempt. I land the Iron Head, and from here, I have 100 energy loaded, which means I can go for the Sacred Fire, and I'm 1 Incinerate off the Brave Bird. Opponent recognizes that they do not have a win con, and that's game over. Moving into the next match, we see a lost lead, Dialga into Zacian. I'm going to be save switching again into the Landorus in these unfavorable leads, and the Landorus save switch honestly just has a lot of the meta in shambles at the moment, and the rare thing that does do very well against it is something that Ho-Oh also doesn't want to see, so baiting it out is a good thing. In this case, they end up banking energy, and they send in a Mudshot Groudon, so the opponent is just triple weak to Landorus. Landorus had definitely fallen out of favor as far as the meta goes, but it is so back and better than ever with Sandsear Storm. The opponent here with their Groudon, they're now 2 stages debuffed. Look at this Fire Punch damage. This Fire Punch does absolutely nothing. That is extremely unfortunate for my opponent. I'm going to be firing off the Sandsear Storm. My opponent just going to let this go. They are more than happy to just fully sacrifice the Groudon. They can send back in the Zacian, but they're not going to have an easy time farming me down, so they're forced to fire off energy. Zacian is going to pick up the knockout with the Wild Charge. I send in the Ho-Oh just because even though they have Wild Charge, Ho-Oh has some very, very nice fast move pressure. My opponent is at the back-to-back, so I am going to wait, switch into Dialga, and catch the Wild Charge. Let's go. It all comes down to what they have in the back, and it's their own Dialga, and this suddenly looks losable. My opponent is going to be able to farm down before I make 2 Iron Heads, and that's a problem for me, as they're going to leave with a lot of energy, and they have the ability to Iron Head bait me and make it to a Draco Meteor. So I'm going to need to either shield a Draco or call a bait. I decide to call a bait. It is the Iron Head, and with that bait call, the win is all but secured. I fire off this Sacred Fire. Opponent is going to commit the shield. The debuff doesn't really matter too much here, as my opponent can only make it to 1 more move on the Dialga. They full send the Draco Meteor. My opponent does a nice play of just basically transferring the Incinerate onto the Zacian, but regardless, thanks to the no shield, we take the win. Now this is a core breaker, leading Dialga into my opponent's Landorus. I'm going to farm up, switch into my own Landorus, not only catching the Sandsear Storm, but also getting a Mud Shot through. My opponent staying in here. This works out great for me. I'm going for the Stone Edge, as Stone Edge, even though I am debuffed, is going to do some very nice chip damage and make my opponent's Landorus way more manageable, whether it ends up on the Dialga or on the Ho-Oh later in the game. They go for the Stone Edge. They're now going to send in their Zacian. Zacian is on Snarl. It has basically no fast move pressure here. I can just debuff them again and again with Sandsear Storm. I'm able to make it to another Sandsear Storm. They're on Snarl. I decide, you know what? I'm going to play aggressive. They shield. I'm going to send in Ho-Oh. Even if they have Wild Charge, they're at -2, so I can tank a Wild Charge no problem. They go for a Play Rough. So for a moment, I had hoped that they don't have Wild Charge, but they just didn't want to debuff themselves. We're going to see they do actually have the Wild Charge. But again, due to the debuff, I can tank that very, very comfortably. So I'm going to tank 1, shield 1, and then fully commit to the farm down. My opponent's Landorus is basically in a range where either one of my Pokemon can farm it down. In the back, they have their own Dialga, and that Sacred Fire does so much damage. I'm able to make it to the Brave Bird. This will pick up the knockout unless they are going to respect it with a shield. They let it through, and my Dialga just cleans up this game. Their Landorus is just much too low. So as you can see, Landorus is technically a core breaker for the team, but it is beatable with a team effort. Moving into the 5th game, leading Dialga into Giratina Origin. So we do see a positive lead. Opponent save switches into their own Dialga. Here you can arguably go into either the Ho-Oh or the Landorus. I decided to go into the Landorus because with Landorus, you can land the Sandsear Storm, go for a 1 shield farm down, and leave with a massive amount of energy. And honestly, I do like the ability to exit this matchup with so much energy. I exit it as well pretty healthy. Like I'm sitting at about like 40% HP, and when they sit in the Giratina, I can just debuff them again and again and again with Sandsear Storm. I'm looking to overfarm quite a lot. A 3rd Sandsear Storm would be able to just knock them out, so my opponent is going to have to throw. And the nice thing is, an Ominous Wind, since they're at -2, will not knock out. They have to go for a Shadow Ball here. They do go for the Shadow Ball. I send in the Dialga. In the back, it's Melmetal. Now, you might think, this is Melmetal's moment to shine. It's stuck up against a Ho-Oh and a Dialga, and it should do well against both. But this matchup right here, I think is one of the most important reasons as to why I find Melmetal extremely underwhelming and not a Pokemon that I run, even though I have one at level 50. This is technically the core that Melmetal is supposed to beat. I don't even get the Sacred Fire debuff, and I'm going to be able to take both shields. My opponent needs to make it to a Rock Slide plus a Superpower, and they're just unable to do so, and they resign the match. So Melmetal up a shield versus the core that it should beat is just not able to get the job done. We move to the next match. We have the Dialga lead. For the Dialga lead, I immediately save switch into the Landorus, just because if my opponent does have a Kyogre in the back, I need to bait it out. So I have baited out the Kyogre. My goal is just to debuff them as much as I possibly can. Here, I could have gone for a Stone Edge. I was hoping that if I went for the Sandsear Storm, it would allow me to make a second one. I don't think it would have, but my opponent actually respects the Stone Edge there, so I'm able to grab a shield. So not only do I bait out the Kyogre that Ho-Oh doesn't want to see, I get a shield. They're double debuffed, so even if they have Blizzard, it's not going to be doing a lot of damage. So I just am able to leverage the fact that I gave up Switch into such a massive advantage in terms of energy and shields. They can fire off as many double debuff surfs as they want to. It's really not going to matter. At this point, I basically just have an insurmountable advantage. I fire off the Draco Meteor. I'm up a shield, so I don't see a point in baiting. My opponent is going to shield. I send in the Ho-Oh. In the back, it's Giratina. This should be a very comfortable win, but as you're going to see, I do end up making a misplay that almost cost me this game. The Shadow Ball does get shielded, and I should be in a pretty good spot here. The only thing I have to avoid is debuffing myself with a Brave Bird and making it very easy for Dialga to farm me down. Oh hey, look, there's me going for a Brave Bird, doing exactly what I should not do. Because now, the Ho-Oh is getting shredded by Dragon Breaths. I make it to a last second Brave Bird. And there, it was an unlosable endgame. I almost found the lose con, but thankfully, the team is just too good. Despite my operator error, the team is going to continue its winning ways as the Dragon Breath picks up the KO. Moving into the next match, leading Dialga into Landorus. Again, Landorus is a tricky lead, but I do like to farm up and try and go for the catch. Unfortunately, my opponent does not let that happen. They hold on to the energy, and now they're going to get to fire off a Stone Edge. The Stone Edge connects, opponent sends in a Zekrom, and that's a big surprise. That tells me they have double Dragon in the back, and like my team, their team is completely core broken by my Landorus. And that's the thing, is a lot of Landorus teams are very weak to opposing Landorus, so even though this team is weak to it, your Landorus will often inspire them to stay in. I've now debuffed them heavily. When they do go for the outrage here, which is most likely, it's at -2, so I'm able to withstand that a lot better than I typically would. So I do get to exit here with some energy. I'm expecting my opponent has Dialga in the back, and if they do, this is super playable, and up a shield, Ho-Oh just wins this for me. So I fire off the Iron Head, that gets them very low. They're going to go for the Sandsear Storm, and I am just going to let this through and trust in my Ho-Oh to win the game. In the back, however, they have Reshiram, and this is not what I was hoping to see. I will need 2 charge attacks to KO. I'm going to be shielding up the Fusion Flares. My opponent does have Crunch. Please don't debuff me, and it debuffs me. That is absolutely brutal. I go for the Sacred Fire. I don't get the Sacred Fire debuff, so they got the 30% chance at a Crunch debuff. They're firing off another charge attack. I'm going to be shielding up, but I don't get the Sacred Fire. I'm still hoping, holding out hope, that I can get a Sacred Fire debuff here. Come on, please, Ho-Oh. The Sacred Fire gets shielded. No debuff. We go 0 for 2 on Sacred Fire debuffs, and unfortunately, we drop the game. Hopping into the final match, leading Dialga into Zacian. Again, bad lead, so I'm just going to save switch into Landorus. And if they stay in, I can debuff them with the Sandsear Storm. It makes it really uncomfortable for them to switch out. And again, just in general, so many teams at the moment are really, really weak to Landorus. It's what makes this team so powerful. They're on double nuke. They go for the Wild Charge. They're going to try and make a catch of a Sandsear Storm onto Yveltal. But I'm just in a commanding position now. I'm able to grab a shield with the Stone Edge. In order to outpace, they're forced to throw on alignment, and giving Landorus free energy is just such a dangerous proposition. I'm just going to stay in here until I can land a Stone Edge, and as soon as I land a Stone Edge, I'm just going to switch out and farm them down, because they are not going to be able to make it to the Dark Pulse as I get the full farm down. They can send in the Zacian, but they choose not to. They send in Groudon, and at this moment, the game is over. The opponent just does not know it yet, as Ho-Oh with a shield is comfortably going to be able to take the win. The Iron Head is going to be shielded. They're going to look to overfarm, and I just no shield. Dialga's done its job. I just saved the shield for Ho-Oh, because I do know that I'm going to have to contend with Zacian and its Wild Charge later. As Groudon, Precipice Blades does quite a bit of damage, even though it is single resisted. I make it to the Brave Bird. I lose charge attack priority, but that's fine. Totally okay, because they don't have any shield, so I can just protect the Ho-Oh, fire off this Brave Bird, and I have the ability to reset the defense drop from the Brave Bird by sending in the Landorus. The Landorus is going to force them to fire off energy. Very, very nice energy awareness here by my opponent, overfarming as much as they possibly can, and they're able to make it kind of close in the end game, as they're going to fire off the Precipice Blades. Precipice Blades does do a respectable amount of damage to the Ho-Oh, but they just do not have enough energy. I feel like we saw a lot of lost leads in these sets, but the team, outside of the one match where there was just some brutal RNG, just kept on winning. All in all, Sandsear Storm on Landorus, in my view, is an amazing addition to the Master League meta. The Master League meta was tending a bit towards alignment-dependent play, which is never a playstyle that I'm a particular fan of, as it can make games feel a lot less dynamic and a lot more predetermined once the battle has begun. But with something like Landorus as the save switch, its ability to debuff even in its worst matchups can really allow your lead Pokemon, even if you've lost lead and lost switch, to generate a massive energy advantage, and by leveraging energy advantage and shield advantage, even when you don't necessarily have switch, you're still able to fight back and win those games. Teams, in my view, don't win 17 in a row accidentally, and my faction's teammate was at a pretty good elo when he went on the 17-game win streak, and I was about 150 points below Legend to start and ended up, after these sets, like right under Legend. So to me, the team feels incredibly strong, and it's nice to see a team that was really dominant in previous seasons with a new moveset addition return to top meta form. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.